Submission is a word and a concept that is greatly misinterpreted and misunderstood today. And because of that, many women end up getting very badly hurt. And I see this very often, it happens everywhere, but I see this very often in religious marriages, right? Christian women who marry and then they get taken advantage of, they get hurt, they basically allow themselves to be subjugated because they misinterpret what the Bible is actually talking about in regards to submission. Hello, I am Zach Rody, and I am here to lead you into creating the relationship of your dreams by inspiring a man into cherishing you, by using your feminine energy, and by using what I call feminine communication. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, make sure you do that below, hit the notification bell, and be sure to like this video because I'm going to make sure it is a good one for you today. So the Bible talks about submission a lot. It talks about a woman following her man. And unfortunately, what has happened is women don't truly understand what submission is. They just understand that, okay, I'm supposed to follow my husband and do what he wants. But we need to distinguish two different ways of following. There is following in a way where you're honoring your heart, where it feels good. There is a rightness to it where you're able to let go and open and receive a man's leadership. Right? Receive your husband's leadership. And then there is a following where you are actually dishonoring your heart. You're allowing yourself to be subjugated. You're allowing yourself to be hurt, and it's making you smaller. It's hurting your feminine self-worth. You're actually making yourself less well off. And that's going to cause a lot of issues in a marriage if you're doing the second type of following. So the second type of following is actually not submission. I call it compliance. You could also call it fawning. You could also call it subjugation. It's like your own willing subjugation. Submission is the first one, right? It's where you are honoring your heart. You're following because you're choosing to, because it's a full yes for you to do so. And this is difficult for a lot of women to even discern because many women don't even know what their full yes is, right? If you have grown up in a really controlling, toxic childhood environment where your needs and boundaries were overridden, you might not even be sure what your yes is. You might be out of touch with what your body is telling you. And so you go from being in a toxic, unhealthy childhood right into a toxic, unhealthy marriage. And you're continuing to follow in a way where you're actually complying, you're fawning, you're allowing yourself to be subjugated. But that's not submission. That's not what the Bible talks about. Now, you might be Christian and you might be not. Ultimately, I don't care. This is going to be relevant for anybody. Because if you want a relationship where a man is taking care of you, where he's providing for you, where he's protecting you, where he's leading you, where he's cherishing you, then you need to learn how to follow properly. You need to learn how to truly submit to a man. Submission is a beautiful act. It's just as beautiful as the act of devotion from a man, where he's cherishing you, where he's taking care of you, right? Because submission, it's an act of faith. It's an act of trust. It's saying, I trust you to take care of me. I'm going to follow you because I trust you and because I respect you. And the problem when it comes to the Bible is what it doesn't really talk about is how a woman needs to communicate her needs and her feelings and her problems and her desires. Because if a woman's not able to do that in a feminine way, which is what I call feminine communication, this is what I teach in my academy, this is what I teach in my masterclass, in my books, and my women's dating course, everywhere. If a woman doesn't know how to communicate in this way, well, then she's going to have to do one of two things. She's going to have to either resist a man's leadership when he's doing something that doesn't feel right for her. That's not submission, right? That's going against the Bible. If you're resisting your man, that's literally the opposite of submission. Or you're going to have to do compliance, right? You're going to be fawning. You're going to be following out of fear. And that's not what the Bible teaches either. You have to communicate your needs so that a man understands what you are experiencing so that he can adjust his leadership, right? If he's leading you to do something that is terrifying for you, or dishonoring for you in some way. For example, here's an interesting one. Let's say you just gave birth to a child and you're in a whole bunch of pain. And you really don't feel right about having sex 2 days after giving birth, which is pretty understandable. If you've ever been in this experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know firsthand because I'm a man, but my wife has, and I know many other women who have. But some men might not know, right? And I know because my wife is communicating this stuff to me. She'll communicate everything. But if you have not communicated your needs, if you're afraid of communicating your needs and your feelings and what you're experiencing, then you might not share that with him. He might not know exactly what you're going through. And if you are stuck in a compliance pattern where you're just doing what the man wants because you believe that's what's in the Bible and you believe that's what God wants, you're going to end up hurting yourself in that situation, right? You're going to have sex where it's going to feel absolutely awful for you. It's going to be incredibly painful. How are you going to be able to deal with that situation without using feminine communication while also following what the Bible says? If you just say no, like, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm in too much pain, well, you have now disrespected your husband. You have now gone against what the Bible is actually teaching. So what I teach is biblical, but I don't get my teachings from the Bible. I learned all of this stuff in my marriage through trial and error and ultimately by listening to my instinct, by learning and paying attention to what my body is telling me. What feels good for me, what feels bad for me. The way that my wife could communicate with me could be very irritating and push me away, or she could communicate with me in a way that inspires me to want to take care of her, to want to cherish her. So I learned all of this just by trusting what my body was telling me. And then I found out later, hey, wait a minute, this is actually really in line with what the Bible teaches. That's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. And so what I learned, though, is that the Bible is not teaching women how to communicate their needs. And so it's putting them in this position where they either have to go into compliance or they have to go into resistance. And communication is the way out. You need to learn how to communicate your needs. Yes, you are in the following role, but that doesn't make you less than in any kind of way. Your needs are just as important as a man's. And your needs include the need for safety, the need for trust, the need to be cherished, the need to feel good, the need to know that your man actually cares about you, right? He's going to be the one that's making the decisions on everything. He's going to be the one that is setting the boundaries for you and for himself. You're not going to be setting boundaries because that would be energetically masculine, because then he would have to submit to your boundaries. So he has to. But in a healthy devotional relationship where a man is leading based on his honor and caring about your needs, he's going to set boundaries to protect you. So in the example that I brought up around having sex a couple days after being pregnant, if a woman vulnerably shared what she's experiencing without trying to get the man to not have sex with her, she's not energetically trying to push him away, to resist his lead in any kind of way. And we're making the assumption that this man is just totally clueless, because you'd think most men would have an idea, oh my God, she just gave birth, we're going to take a few weeks off minimum. But let's just assume here for this example. In this example, she is going to be sharing what she's experiencing, and then her man is going to be like, oh yeah, okay. You know what? We are not going to have sex for a while. I want to make sure that you're fully healed up. I want to make sure that you're feeling good, that you're actually going to enjoy being intimate together. So he's actually setting the boundary. He's setting the expectations. He's changing his behavior and setting a boundary for himself just because of how you feel, without you trying to get him to do anything. Okay? And now you're actually submitting to that. You're submitting to the boundary that he's creating, to the expectation that he's decided. So a woman who's in her self-worth, if she's following biblical teachings, is actually never putting herself in a position where she's getting hurt in this kind of way. And she also never has to set boundaries. She never has to resist her man. She just has to express what she's feeling. Now, of course, this entirely depends on the kind of man that you choose. Because if you choose a man who is abusive, who doesn't actually care about your needs, doesn't care about your feelings, who believes that his needs or even his desires are more important than your needs, then feminine communication isn't actually going to work, right? You need a man whose heart is online, who actually cares about you when you use feminine communication so that he can be inspired into taking care of you. But when you've got that, and when you've learned how to inspire that man using feminine communication by shifting into your feminine energy, then you're going to have such an amazing experience. You're going to have a man who is fully devoted to you because he is receiving what he needs, which is your submission, right? Like if we're talking about a man and woman's needs, a woman needs that safety and that love, that devotion, that cherishing, that trust from her man. A man doesn't really need that. His need is very different. His need is respect from you. And a big part of respect is that you are submitting to him, that you're trusting him. You're trusting him to lead. You're trusting his decisions. You're trusting that he will make boundaries so that you don't have to. Every time you make a boundary, every time you resist him, you're disrespecting him. This is why this is in the Bible. Because men and women are fundamentally different. We complement each other beautifully because a man has a masculine instinct which needs respect, needs to lead, needs to be seen as the leader, and a woman has a feminine instinct. She needs to follow, she needs to trust, she needs to receive from her man, she needs to be led. We complement each other perfectly when we know how to be in these roles. But the only way to be in these roles in a truly heart-honoring way, in a way that your needs are going to be met, in a way where your feminine self-worth is online, is when you know feminine communication. Otherwise, it's not real. It's not real submission. It's just compliance. It's an act. It's pretend. To learn feminine communication, to learn how to let go, you need to actually understand this language. You need to understand the energetic differences. And this is what we teach in our Academy program. We show our clients how to do this. We practice it with them. We also show this in our masterclass. It's a 2-hour event where we teach you feminine communication. We role play it for you. We answer your questions. We show it in our dating course. We show it in my books. I show it everywhere so that you can start to apply this into your marriage if you're married right now, or your relationship if you're in a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, or if you're dating, right? And you want to find the kind of devotional man that you need. This is what's going to help you do it. All of my offers are below this video. They're in the links in the description. So go to the description, open it up, read through it, click a link that really resonates with you and get started learning this stuff. You can have the relationship of your dream. You got to start learning.